Hi, everybody. My name is Carl Darden, and I'd like to welcome and thank all of you for joining us today on Navy Sports Central. I'm your host, and this is the official podcast of the Navy Sports Nation, where we take a deeper dive into Navy sports. Today, I'll be joined by a very special guest who will give us a first-hand look at Navy Rugby's national championship season. We'll be discussing that in our deep dive segment. Our sports update will include the final count on the number of Patriot League titles the Mids finished with, including the last 3 they picked up. We've got all that plus our Ask Me Anything, Question of the Day, and Midwatch segments as this year's sports season draws to a close. So please, stick around. All right, it is great to have you with us today for an episode that I think you're really going to enjoy. Whether you are a returning listener or checking us out for the first time, thanks for making us part of your day. So let's go ahead and kick things off like we normally do with our sports update. And we're going to be spending most of our time talking about both the track and rowing teams. I'm going to go ahead and start with men's and women's track. And I've got to say that I don't know that I can recall a time when the Mids have had so many athletes come through with top performances at these big meets where everything is on the line. Just over 2 weeks ago, the men's team won their 9th straight Outdoor Patriot League title, while the women came away with their 5th in a row. I'm going to get to some of the individual performances in a minute, but the first thing I wanted to share was the team scores. The men finished with just over 323 points, and Army finished second. And if the Mids had spotted them 150 points going in, the Black Knights would have still lost by 4. That's how overpowering this men's team has been over the last few years at the Patriot League Championships. And the women were nearly as dominant. They scored 241.5 points, and that was 90 better than second-place Boston University. So now let's take a look at some of the top performances. Overall, the men won 12 of the 22 events. They also broke 2 meet records and posted 4 new top 10 school times, or marks if you consider the field events. And in one of the more impressive sprint results, freshman Jonah Johnson won the 100 meters with a time of 10.53, and he was followed by his teammates Sethan Hollier, Jay Evans, and Caden Daly. They ran times of 10.66, 10.73, and 10.80 respectively to finish 2nd through 4th. Jacques Guillaume repeated as the 400-meter champion with a time of 47.30. He also won the 400-meter hurdles and ran the anchor leg for the winning 4x400-meter relay team, and he was named Men's Track Athlete of the Meet. Bramir Vick dominated the 110-meter hurdles, winning by 0.37 seconds with a time of 14 seconds flat. The biggest point producer for the men was Joshua Boama. He finished 2nd in the hammer throw, and then turned around and won the shot put and discus throw the next day to ring up 28 points and claim 3 medals. For that, Boama was named the Men's Field Athlete of the Meet. Now let's check out some of the top performances on the women's side. They won 7 events, broke 2 meet records, and established an incredible 14 top 10 school times or marks. Molly Chapman earned the Women's Field Athlete of the Meet award. She won the long jump with a leap of 19 feet 2.5 inches, broke the school mark while placing 3rd in a triple jump, going 40 feet 5.5 inches, and then finally she finished in a tie for 4th place in the high jump. Now, while Chapman was getting the job done in the field events, her classmate Molly Mangan was doing the same in the sprints. The senior from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania made history with a new meet record in the 400 meters. That was a particularly good race. I actually watched a video on that, and I'll include the link in the show notes. But Mangan came from behind in the final stretch and caught Boston University's Neolani Phillips right at the tape. Her winning time of 54.14 seconds beat the previous time set by Boston's Tori Levy in 2017 by more than 1/10 of a second. Mangan's time is also the 3rd fastest in Navy history. In addition to that, she posted the 8th best time in school history in the 200 meters with a time of 24.23, and that was good enough for 3rd place. And then finally, she also ran the anchor leg of the 4x400 meter relay, which the Mids also won. With just the NCAAs left on the schedule, Mangan's remarkable career is coming to a close at Navy. During her 4 years, the women's indoor and outdoor track teams never lost to Army. That's a total of 7 stars since the 2020 outdoor meet was canceled due to COVID. They never lost the Patriot League Championship either. And when it came to putting points on the board, Mangan is as reliable a track athlete as there is. Coach Cook could count on her to run any sprint between 60 meters indoors all the way up to 400 meters, both indoors and outdoors. And if you go into the Navy record books looking at the top 10 performances in the various sprint events, you will see Mangan's name scattered all over it. So even though she's graduating next week, her impact will be felt long after she's gone. The most immediate evidence of that is the winning culture she and her classmates have established. Juniors Ellie Abraham and Emily Booten have been the top distance runners on the team since they showed up in Annapolis. And freshman Gia Anderson is already making some noise in the sprints and in the hurdles. She took second in the 100-meter hurdles in her first Patriot League championship meet and earned a few more points as part of the 4x100-meter relay team, which also finished second. So now both teams will go to compete in the East Regionals of the NCAA Championships, which take place in Jacksonville, Florida next week. And by the way, they'll be covered on ESPN+. Okay, now it's time to get you up to speed on the rowing teams. Both the heavyweights and lightweights competed at the Eastern Sprints this past weekend. The lights had 5 entries, with 4 of them, those being the number 1, 3, 4, and 5 Varsity 8 boats making the podium. The number 5 boat won their race, and the number 4 crew took second, while the first and third Varsity 8 boats finished third in their respective races. Overall, the lights finished 6th at the sprints, so it was a pretty good showing in a field that was really, really deep and super competitive. In fact, Coach Friedrich on the heavyweight side, he commented that he had not seen such a deep and fast field in quite a while. Speaking of the heavyweights, they entered a total of 6 boats. The most successful ones were the number 5 and number 6 crews. They performed very well, finishing 4th and 1st in their respective races. The 1 Varsity 8 crew finished 14th overall. So definitely not the result they were looking for, but both teams will have the next couple of weeks to make some adjustments to make sure they are ready for the IRA Championships, which take place in West Windsor, New Jersey from June 2nd through the 4th. Now let's get to the women's rowing team, and I saved them until the end for a really good reason. First, I need to give you a little bit of a backstory. This team has been absolutely dominant over the last 10 years, winning 8 league championships overall. But last year, Boston University ended the mid-6-year winning streak, and the Terriers were also the number 1 seed coming into this year's league championships. The 3 races that figured into scoring were the first and second Varsity 8s and also the first Varsity 4s. BU won the 1v4 and 2v8 races, but the championship is based on points, not the number of winning boats. So going into the 1v8 grand final, the Terriers held a 27-24 lead over the Mids. And really the only way for the Navy women to take home the trophy was to not just finish ahead of the Terriers, but probably they needed to win it. I'll explain how that works in a second. Anyway, BU got off to a great start, and they'd established a lead of about 4 to 5 seats in that third 500. In fact, there was about 700 meters to go in the race. And by the way, the total race distance in the spring is 2,000 meters. And it was in that third 500 that the Mids started to crank things up. They cut into the Terriers' lead with each stroke. In fact, at one point, the announcer said that they were rowing at close to 40 strokes a minute with about 400 meters left. So they were basically in full afterburner at this time. And with roughly 200 meters left, it looked like the Mids had pulled ahead. It was kind of weird to tell from the angle of the video, and I'll post that in the show notes as well. But they just kept their foot on the gas, and they won by nearly a boat length. So by the time it was all said and done, the Mids had finished about 3.5 seconds ahead of the Terriers. And I got to tell you, that was one of the most impressive final sprints I've seen in a while. It was also good enough to reclaim the Patriot League Championship, because by winning that 1v8 race, the Mids finished with 51 points, and that matched Boston University's total. But in the case of a tie after all 3 races, the highest finisher in the 1v8 race serves as a tiebreaker. So that amazing final sprint gave the Navy women their 7th title in 8 years and their 9th overall. Pretty amazing. The NCAA Championships are next, which take place over the Memorial Day weekend in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And just to finish things up, I just wanted to give you a quick count on how many Patriot League championships the Mids ended up winning this season. In addition to the 3 we just discussed, that being men's and women's outdoor track and also women's rowing, the Mids also won league titles in men's and women's cross country, men's soccer, men's and women's indoor track, men's and women's swimming and diving, and finally men's tennis. That comes out to a total of 11, so congratulations to all the athletes and coaching staffs on another great year. That does it for the sports update, but there was one quick question I wanted to answer in our Ask Me Anything segment, and it came from our friend W.T. Dorr. He asked, I remember hearing that Navy won the Star Series again this year, but what about the overall competition? Did they win that also? Mr. Dorr, thanks again for the question, and it's a good one because as recently as 2019, Navy did win the Star Series 13-11, but came up one shy overall. Army had the edge 20-19 during that season. But this year, though, the Mids managed to hang on by that same 20-19 count. The Black Knights made up a lot of ground by taking both lacrosse star games, and then the women lost a tough one 12-11 in double overtime in the Patriot League semifinals. And then the baseball team lost all 3 games of a 3-game series, so that made things a lot closer. Anyway, another sports season is in the books, and the Mids once again came out on top in both the Star Series and in the overall competition, so That's really good news. Coming up next, we have our deep dive segment, which you will not want to miss. The Navy men's rugby team will be front and center, and I've got an awesome guest joining me who played a critical role in their success. So don't go anywhere. We are back here at Navy Sports Central, and it is time for our deep dive segment. Our guest today has just finished up his first year as the assistant director of the Navy men's rugby program. Prior to arriving in Annapolis, he was at Dartmouth, where he led the Big Green to multiple Division I AA national championships. He brings with him a wide range of collegiate and professional rugby expertise, which played a huge role in the Mids title run this year. So I'm very happy to welcome Coach James Willocks to the podcast. Coach Willocks, thank you so much for joining me today on Navy Sports Central. I'm really looking forward to talking with you about your first year with the team and how things came together in what turned out to be an amazing season.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, so Coach, I wanted to spend the time looking at this journey through your eyes, and I want to start with the day that the assistant director position first came onto your radar. How exactly did that come about?
Yeah, it's actually quite a long story, to be honest with you. So Coach Hickey, director of rugby here at Naval Academy, him and I have a long-standing relationship. Back in 2012, him and I both took up positions at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. So we worked together on and off. I bounced back and forth, a short stint back in New Zealand, back here. But we worked together for around 4 or 5 years up there in New Hampshire. So we had a really good relationship. We kept in touch. I went to Penn State for a little bit. Coach Hickey came down to Navy, which then opened the Dartmouth job up for me to go back to Dartmouth. And we stayed in touch this whole time. And Coach Hickey had always talked about, like, he'd love to get the band back together. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, some things happened with the alumni here and with the athletic department here in AAA. And the program was in the process of being elevated to varsity. And Coach Hickey was looking to expand a staff because he was sort of doing everything himself. He had some volunteer assistants, but he was basically running the program himself. And at the time, he had 70 to 80 midshipmen.
Right.
So for one coach, that's a bit of a challenge, particularly when those 70 or 80 midshipmen have never played rugby before. So you're actually starting from scratch. So anyway, he reached out to me. It was probably fall of 2021, I guess. I was down here coaching Dartmouth. We played against Navy, final game of the regular season. And as I was coming down, he called and he said, "Look, do you want to hang around for a couple of days afterwards? I'd love to chat, love to meet some people down here, talk about some things down here." So I hung around for a couple of days after that game, which was not this last November, the one before. Hung around for a few days, got to meet some people, talk to some people, and obviously there was some exciting things happening and got the opportunity to come down and work with a pretty special group. So it was tough to leave Dartmouth, don't get me wrong, really good academic institution, great program, great history. But with the program being elevated to varsity, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. So that plus the caliber of students that we get to work with here, the caliber of midshipmen. I mean, I've got 2 young children. And for my children to be exposed to these men and women, that's the greatest gift I could ask for.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, I think you may have answered the next question in terms of what actually sold you on the program. It sounds like it was a little bit about the opportunity that it did get elevated to varsity status, plus what you just mentioned about your children being exposed to that environment. Anything you care to add to that?
So, I mean, 60 years of history. So it's like, yes, we're being elevated to varsity. That's great. But there's such an incredible foundation, a 60-year foundation of this incredible culture, this incredible purpose. So for me to be able to come in and contribute to that. So I look at it like I knew a lot about Navy, not the Naval Academy, not the Navy. I knew a lot about Navy Rugby before I came in here. I played against them when I was at Penn State, played against them at Dartmouth. And there was always this narrative of these guys are really fit, really physical, but they're robots. Mm-hmm. And if you can out-finesse them, you can beat them. So my mindset coming in here was like, the culture exists. Coach Hickey's done an amazing job fostering the culture. I look at that as like, okay, if I can just come in and make us a little bit more technically and tactically savvy, all of a sudden we can have some great success from a rugby standpoint.
Right. All right. Well said. Now, you have a significant amount of championship experience from your time up there at Dartmouth. And what I want to know here is, what was the common thread that ran through those championship teams? Obviously, the talent's got to be there, right? That foundation has to be there. But beyond that, what was the common thread with those Dartmouth teams, and what did you see that you'd be able to bring to Navy?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, and I pondered that one for a little bit there. I think trust is probably a big thing there. Mm-hmm. Is that I think back on some of those championships we won back there. We had a group of players that really trusted each other, really trusted the process, and really worked hard for that. And I think that's been a big part of our success this year, was that there is a deep trust between the players, between the staff, between everyone involved in the program. And then along with that trust it's a bit like a shared accountability, basically, like everyone holds each other accountable.
Right.
And I felt we probably had that at a lot of those Dartmouth things. But what we have here is expanded on that. Like, I mean, the level of accountability that our players have to each other here has been phenomenal. Obviously, the results have reflected a fair bit of that.
Right. Okay. So one of the things that you're probably well aware of now is when you talk about Navy sports, and it doesn't really matter what the sport is, it could be croquet for all but beating Army is a big deal, right?
Yep. Yep.
So as fans, and especially being part of the alumni, our minds are conditioned to judge the success of a season on whether or not Navy beats Army. You guys did it 3 times. And when I was watching the replay of the championship game, one of the announcers said that Coach Hickey actually credited you with bringing some of the things to the table that helped Navy get over a little bit of a hump, because at the club level, I guess Army had the edge. Of course, they're a varsity program from a while back, and they were the defending national champions. So can you speak to that a little bit? What was it that you saw when you first came on board? I think you mentioned a little bit of it earlier, but what was it that you saw? You said, okay, if we can change this and this, then we've got a really good shot at just knocking Army off their perch.
Yeah, the Army ones, that's funny. And I'll go back to one of your earlier questions, actually, the coming to the assistant director position. So last year, Army won a national championship. Okay. They lost one regular season game. That one game they lost to was Dartmouth. When I was coaching Dartmouth. So I do I think that that carried a fair bit of weight in people's eyes down here. They're like, oh my goodness, okay, you can beat Army there. So now there's a lot more to the story than that, but it was, we did manage to tip them much, which was quite nice. That was the first time in 25 years, I think, at Dartmouth we'd beaten West Point. But to answer your question there, no, I mean, for me, it was just about let's build a really simple game model. Let's build a simple model that suits our strengths. And a lot of our strength is based on effort and work rate. Okay, we've got a group of midshipmen who do a lot of those things that require no talent, getting up off the ground faster than others, discipline. They do all those things really, really well. So I sort of came in and looked at, okay, how can we build a simple game model that maximizes our strengths and puts us in positions to be successful? What that looked like from a tactical standpoint is we spent a lot of time on a set piece, so scrums, lineouts. So set pieces are basically every time it's a contest for possession. If we felt we could dominate them, that sets us up really well. Our defense, okay, we don't have a lot of attacking flair. Keep in mind, we've got a group of midshipmen on our squad of 23 that played against Cal. 13 of them had never played rugby before getting to the Naval Academy.
Okay. All right.
13 of them. So we've got some very good players by their own right. Lewis Gray, Sean McLeaney. We've got guys who came in with really good rugby experience. But conversely, we've got a lot of guys that haven't. So we built a really simple game model based around our set piece, based around our defense, that allowed us to be quite successful.
Wow. Okay. That sounds good. Now, one thing, just based on what you just told me about, 13 players never having played, obviously this national championship is going to carry a lot of currency on the recruiting trail. So can you talk to me a little bit about that? I got to be honest with you. I think I was talking with one of my classmates. Actually, somebody had asked a question in the last podcast episode about, hey, now that rugby is a varsity sport, what's the recruiting picture going to look like? And I hadn't really thought about it, and I just assumed, well, they're probably just going to keep canvassing the campus to figure out, what football players want to transition over to rugby, What I didn't realize after I did a lot of research is that there's an extensive high school and club level program developed through USA Rugby across the country. So obviously, that's going to be a network that you tap into. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe you can even draw upon your days at Dartmouth, what that whole process looks like in terms of just setting up these networks and making the connections?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the recruiting for us on a varsity level is very uncharted territory.
Hmm.
This year was our first year. So last year we had one recruit. Let's call him that, okay? Because we were transitioning to varsity, they helped us out a little bit. One recruit, Ronan Krieger. He was our freshman lead fullback, played every single game, was all conference, was invited to be USA U20s stud, absolute stud, incredible midshipman, incredible person. So one recruit.
Hmm.
Now, this year's a little bit different. We're getting a few more come in. So there's going to be some challenges within that. The challenges are going to be making sure that all our recruits understand our purpose and that we're here to be midshipmen first, rugby players second. So that's going to we're going to have to make sure that we as a staff and we as a leadership group foster that. But what it looks like from an in and out standpoint, we've already built some really good relationships with USA Rugby. Coach Hickey and myself have coached U20 level, men's collegiate All-American level. So we have a lot of great networks and relationships throughout the country. So we have a lot of coaches who will reach out to us and say, look, I've got student so-and-so wants to serve, wants this, wants the other thing. So that certainly has made our life a little bit easier. We've got some really good connections in San Diego and out west,
Okay.
which is a hotbed of high school rugby. Ronan Krieger, freshman plebe that I was talking about there before, he comes from that area. So we've actually got a little bit of a Californian influence coming in this next recruiting class, which would be exciting because there is some really good high school rugby out there.
Mm-hmm.
Strong Polynesian influence out there as well, which
very good.
If you know, the Polynesians are pretty handy rugby players as well.
Right.
And then there's pockets around the country. We've got a couple of guys coming in from the Northeast. There's some decent high school rugby up in Boston, the Midwest, Ohio. So we've got a few guys coming from around the country. So for us, the recruiting piece it's ever developing, it's ever evolving. But we first and foremost need to identify students that want to serve, that want to make this commitment. And then we start to look at the rugby piece because, we don't want to sell someone a dream that doesn't exist.
Right.
So we don't want to sell them this. The Naval Academy, it's a different college experience.
For sure.
Okay? The college experience I was selling at Dartmouth is very different to the college experience that exists down here at the Naval Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So first and foremost, we need to identify students that understand that. And I'm impressed every day that I see these men and women knowing the commitment they've made. So it's just making sure we continue to identify students like that. And to your piece before around the recruiting off the yard, that's still going to be a massive piece of who we are. Rugby is still very young. Yes, high school rugby is growing, but the reality and the truth is if you're a good high school athlete, you're probably not playing rugby. There's exceptions. There's absolutely exceptions, and we're hoping we find those exceptions. But I'll use I'll use two plebes, for example. AJ Young out of Alabama, and then we had Austin Taylor out of North Carolina. They're two plebes who traveled with us to California, who had never played rugby before getting here. AJ, a really good basketball player. And then Austin, what did Austin do? He might have been a rower, big man.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's two examples who in a very, very short space of time contributed to a national championship team. So we've got to ensure that we continue to find those, call them diamonds, call them whatever you want to call them, that exist at the Naval Academy. Because you know the student population here. There are some incredible men and women. So we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot by not being able to identify those.
Right, for sure. Okay. So I'd mentioned earlier that I had a couple of my classmates that played, obviously, when it was a club sport back then. And one of them in particular, he's actually I think he just retired, but he was an admiral. He made admiral, and his name is Gardner Howe. And he has remained really, really close to the program. And I noticed that actually at the championship game, there was a significant Navy crowd. So when I think about how long a season this was, because, going back to the fall, you guys had a little bit of a break in the winter, but certainly 18 games is a long grind. What did it mean for you guys to have that community support, both with current fans, and then the alumni base, in terms of that fan support to kind of get you through the season?
Yeah, I mean, it was. If you saw scenes at Houston after the game, that was special. I'm still scratching my head when I watch the game. We've got alumni and fans who are on the field faster than the guys who are on the bench on the side of the field. I still laugh every time I see that. I was like, how did he get there before I did? But no, we talked about this a lot during the fall as well. As like, yes, this is our first year of varsity, but we're a 60-year tradition. We're 60 years of developing warriors, and so we wanted to make sure we continue that. So that's been a massive part of our narrative. Is like what we're doing right now is temporary. Okay, so like we're doing it for what's come before us, and we're laying this foundation for what's about to come. But the support's been phenomenal on so many different fronts. I mean, if you saw the crowd, we might have had hundreds of people on the field afterwards, all Navy supporters, significantly more Navy supporters than Cal supporters, which was always nice to see.
For sure.
But it has been huge, from the financial support we get through the Navy Rugby Alumni Association, from people showing up to games and tents on the sideline. Like that's, for us, that shows how much this means to everybody. So it's validation in that, look, we're on the right track. We are heading down the right path. We are staying true to our purpose. So it's very special. It's been very special.
All right, good. So now I'm going to want to kind of transition towards the run up to the championship game. So you just beaten Lindenwood University in the semifinals, and you've got a 2-week break here. What were some of the things that you and Coach Hickey discussed in terms of getting the team ready both mentally and physically?
The Lindenwood review was funny. Final score, I think, was 12-10 or 12-10. I think it was 12-10.
12-10, yep.
So we stood up in our review on the Monday and said, man, if we're going to rely on luck to win us games, that's not going to happen, because we used it all in that semi-final. Now people will say, yeah, you make your own luck, but if you go back and watch that game, we were very blessed. We had a couple of moments of individual brilliance that saved us that game. So we could no longer rely on luck. And the reality is for us is that the final 2 weeks, that was just the icing on the cake. Right, like the work had been done since August.
Right.
So our process stayed the same. Yes, we talked about the occasion and not letting the occasion get the best of us, and trying to identify that. But physically, our prep was all done. We have a pretty consistent schedule. The boys, we knew we were in good shape physically, which thankfully we saw the final against Cal. So we trusted our process. We trusted our system. We trusted what had worked for us. We didn't change anything drastically. We did address the event and the environment and what it was going to be like. We spoke about it. We tried to replicate some of those things in the training environment. But I mean, ultimately, you look back, we probably didn't do that well, because the first 20 minutes of the game, we were flat. We were very flat. We were very shell-shocked. We didn't fire a shot for 29 minutes. Thankfully, we did for the next 50 minutes. We managed to reel it back in and get on top of things.
Right.
But no, ultimately for us, it was about just trusting our process, trusting what we'd done since August, and just living by that.
Right. Okay, good. So I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and take a short break. And when we come back, Coach Willix and I will take a look at some of the key moments in that championship game. Stay close. Okay, thanks for staying with us here on Navy Sports Central. Carl Darden here with you, and my guest today is James Willix, who is the Assistant Director for the Navy Men's Rugby Program. Coach, what I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about the game itself as it developed. And my analysis for rugby is going to be extremely basic. Not like I could break down a football or basketball game, and I'm going to go off of a lot of what the announcers were saying, okay? So in the first, like you said, the first 20 minutes, part of that first water break, California did a really good job of just straight up running north and south and just keeping the ball moving, vertically, right? Was that something that you were expecting? And what kind of adjustments did you make as time went on? Because in the second half, they got that one try, but that was basically it. Yep. So clearly there was something that happened that worked in your favor.
Yeah. So we actually, in this, we knew that's what they were going to do. Okay, we played Cal in the spring, and they had some really good success late in the game, and actually came back and made it close through that very vertical, quick pick game. So tactically, we had prepared for that. Technically, we probably hadn't prepared enough, so we'd done a lot. We hadn't actually addressed like the contact piece, the collision piece. So that's where that 20-minute water break, and particularly at halftime, we really addressed the technical elements of that solution, which is pretty simple. It's just our body height. It's like we've got to drop our body height. That's going to allow us to dominate these collisions, and then we're going to be in a good space. So yes, we knew they were going to do it. Tactically, we knew it was coming. Technically, we probably weren't quite sharp enough, but we did address it, and the boys did a really good job with that. And then in the second half, technically, obviously, we solved that, and then we actually started to play a little bit more Navy Rugby. So go back to the previous piece around our set piece. So our line out for us was a really big part of our game. We had a lot of good success with our line out and line out more. Our line out probably functioned the worst it had all spring, that first half against Cal,
right?
Which certainly didn't help us. So that gave them a lot of momentum. It sort of took our strength away from us and then played into their hands. Thankfully, we were able to get that right late in that first half and heading into that second half. And obviously, that halftime was interesting because people think it's like, oh, you make a lot of adjustments and you must have done this and you must have done that. And yeah, we talked around a few things that we were seeing that we felt we could do better, particularly in regard to that stopping their quick vertical game. But Jack McMahon, our captain, I remember sitting there. He spoke at the end, cool, calm, and collected. He said, "Man, I'm the calmest I've ever been. You know what we've got to do. Let's go there and execute." And I just remember him sitting there and the look on his face, just complete confidence, complete trust in what he was going to do, complete trust in the guys around him. And then they went out there and did it.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, one of the players that I was hearing a lot about during the year was Lewis Gray. And you didn't hear his number called a lot offensively, but the announcers really did focus on his defensive effort. And when it comes to sports, I'm kind of a defensive guy anyway. I mean, when I played club lacrosse, I played defenseman. Yep. When I watch basketball, I'm watching what the defense is doing, So can you speak to his effort on defense and how that really kind of helped stabilize the effort in the second half and kind of gave you guys what you needed to jump ahead?
Yeah, Lou is special. Lou is very special. Actually, cool story about Lou is that I recruited Lou to go to Dartmouth. I really wanted Lou to go to Dartmouth. So when I was still coaching there, I loved him, awesome human being, really good rugby player. Character-wise, I knew he'd be an incredible young man. I tried so hard to get him to Dartmouth. Thankfully, for everyone involved, he wound up at the Naval Academy. So come full circle, I get to spend Lou's senior year with him. And Lou's a special human being. He is a really special human being. We talk about Lou. Lou has a bit of venom in him. I don't want to say hate, but he has a little bit of venom. So like when he runs through you or when he tries to tackle you, you're going to know about that. And we saw that in that Cal game. He had a key tackle for them to knock a ball on when they were in prime scoring position, which turned the game. He had another key strip late in the game to give us possession back and allow us to close out the game. Right. But Lou, like our game model, we talk about set piece and defense, but we've got this belief that like none of that matters if you're not giving effort, maximum effort. So that's willingness to get off the ground. That's willingness to put yourself in dark spaces. And Lou has been a really big driver of that, not just come Saturday, but in the training environment. Like for our guys to be able to go to step on the training field with Lou, who best collegiate rugby player in the country, Rudy Schultz Award, so actually is the best rugby player in the country. And that like for our guys to see the effort that he gives every single day. So that's not just a Saturday thing for Lou. That he has an intensity and an effort every single day. So Lou's special. Lou's really, really special. Lou will be missed. He will be missed massively, but we're so excited to see him go on to be an officer in the Marine Corps, and he'll do very well. Yeah,
no doubt about that. Okay, so you've won several national championships when you were at Dartmouth. Can you talk a little bit about how this one was different compared to those?
Yeah, that's a good question. This one is different. So the national championships I won at Dartmouth, they were part of the division that we were in there. Okay, so that was Division 1 AA at the time, which is what we played in. It was great. It worked hard, and it took a lot to win them. This is the pinnacle. There's no debate around it. We played against the best teams in the country, and we beat the best teams in the country. To do that with, and it might sound strange coming from someone with an accent like mine, but to do that with domestic players, with all American players, that's phenomenal. Because there's this narrative around USA Rugby that you've got to get internationals. You need guys who have played the game for a long time if you want to be truly successful. we just went and did it with all domestic players.
Yeah.
So it was like we showed that through a great environment, through a lot of things that the Naval Academy fosters, you can go on and do that. But this one was particularly special. It was particularly special given all those things.
Right. Okay, good. Oh, and by the way, just to validate your point there, I've had conversations with Navy's lightweight rowing coach, Sean Bagnall, a few times, and he spoke to that as well. Rowing is a sport similar to rugby in a sense that there's a lot of international influence on teams other than the service academies. So yeah, I see what you're saying there. He's like going, gosh, every time we go and like trade jerseys, we're talking to people that have like Norwegian accents and stuff like that. So it's really, really kind of funny. But yeah, it's a very, very good point. There's a certain extra satisfaction that goes with, okay, these are all homegrown guys, and they're able to compete with, like you said, the best of the best. So really, really good stuff. So 18-0, right? National championship. What are some early thoughts? Probably a little bit too soon to start thinking about this, but maybe not. Some early thoughts on how you and Coach Hickey can use this experience to build the success of the program.
Yeah, good question. We started having those conversations in the office this week. So we drew a line under the last season, and yes, we'll enjoy the celebrations and we'll enjoy the time that we spent together as a squad. But we're into a new chapter now. It's a new book, essentially. That chapter's finished. We're into a new book in the series. So lessons that we take, we've got a lot of returners. We'll lose some key guys, but majority of our squad is coming back. So the experience that we've garnered through this season is going to be phenomenal. And then you mix in a good number of guys like Ronan Krieger with really good rugby playing experience coming in. I mean, we couldn't be more proud of what's being achieved. As far as Coach Hickey and I are concerned, like this is just the start. It's like we plan on doing this consistently year after year after year after year. And how we do that, there's obviously a little bit more in how we do that. And I think the big thing for us is making sure we remain innovative and we don't get stale. Because just because it works now, does that mean it's going to work with the next group of players that we've got? And call it, Coach Hickey and I, we joke about this all the time. New Zealanders are inherently arrogant when it comes to rugby. We're very, very arrogant. So it was just on that. It's like we'll back ourselves as a staff to stay innovative and to stay ahead of the game. So that's going to be a challenge for us. That's our challenge is making sure we don't get complacent. Yes, we want to make sure like we've got a good foundation and we know what does work, but we can't fall into the trap that's always going to work. So those are a lot of the conversations we're having right now. What does evolution for us look like? What's the next step as a program? So those are all the conversations that are happening now.
Okay. All right. Good. So before we wrap things up, I did want to get your take as a coach on a couple other questions relating to how rugby has evolved over the years. In every sport that I follow, and whenever I talk with either a coach or somebody who's got way more experience than I do in that particular sport, I always ask them, okay, when you think back over rugby in this case, over the last, say, decade or so, has there been a specific innovation to the game or rule change to the game that really kind of made it more exciting to watch? And if so, what would that be?
Probably the opposite, to be honest with you. There's the game, particularly at the professional level, it's gone away from a lot of attacking, wide open, fast playing rugby to a very set piece to set piece and kicking based game. So there's a lot of kicking. Territory is massive.
Got it.
Okay, so like if you can be playing in the right areas of the field, that's a massive part of the game. So that probably South Africa won the last World Cup, not the last one, 2 World Cups ago on a model of rugby that was basically kick and tackle. Every time they had the ball, they were going to kick it back to you and they were going to tackle you, turn you over, and then capitalize off your mistakes. And that model seems to have transitioned into a lot of rugby now. So a lot of rugby is doing that. So yeah, it's probably gone the other way, to be honest. So there's a lot of mauls. So if you obviously saw our Cal game off the line out, you can build a maul. It's really hard to stop. It wouldn't surprise me within the next year or two if they make some law changes around that to force teams to be a little bit more creative there. So it's probably gone the other way. It's probably less exciting now than it used to be 10 years ago. But part of that's too probably there's more. The game's been professional now for longer. There's more eyes on it. There's more tactical detail. There's more technical detail. So teams and people collectively are starting to figure out like how to win rugby games. And that's what we talk about too, is like, look, like we want to play good rugby, but we're not behooved to play exciting rugby. We want to teach our midshipmen how to win. Okay, our purpose is greater than playing exciting rugby. So sometimes the knock on the service academies is that they're robots. We don't play a lot of rugby. We are trying to break that, but at the end of the day, it's not our job to play exciting rugby. It's our job to teach these midshipmen how to be successful, how to prepare, and how to win.
Understood. Okay, so kind of going along those lines now, you are the NCAA or I'm sorry, CRA rugby commissioner, or you're on the rules committee. Let's put it that way. And you're going to say, okay, this is great, but there's nothing like having a little bit more excitement on offense. What would you change to kind of help open things back up again?
It's a good question. What would I change? That's a really good question to open things up. I'd probably change some more laws. I would. There's actually talk around changing the penalties. So when you win a penalty, you kick a touch, you get the line out. There's people actually talking around changing that law, so that would take the mauling piece out of it. They actually added a new law 2 years ago around the kicking game. It's called a 50-22. It's if you kick the ball from inside your 50 and it goes out inside their 22, you get the ball back. And what that was supposed to do was supposed to force the defense to drop more defenders to cover that, to give more space to attack. Didn't really work as they had planned it. The MLR is the Major League Rugby, the professional league in this country. They're trying to do a lot of innovative things around speeding the game up. So they'll do like one scrum when 8 guys get together and push. They'll go, you're only allowed one reset. If that scrum goes down once, it's just going to be play on, play quickly. Mm-hmm. So the MLR is trying to be innovative there. But as far as what would I do, there's people much more intelligent than me that are trying to do that right now.
All right. So let me see. I've basically run through all the questions. Is there anything that you'd like to add that I didn't cover? I always like to give the guests a chance to kind of speak to, things that are maybe even if it's outside of rugby or something that you're doing connection with rugby that's outside of the academy, just to give you the floor for a little bit and talk about what's important to you.
Yeah, no, that's appreciated actually. And for me, to be honest, it's a big thank you to a lot of different people. As a program, we've got some amazing mentors. I mean, from a military standpoint, from a human being standpoint, I mean, Colonel Stiskel, Captain Frankie, Major Reda, Gunny Castillo, like to have men like that around our environment is incredible. So it's a big thank you for all the support. It's for everything that's been poured into this. 18-0. I mean, man, like first year we couldn't ask for much more. Yeah. And that is a result of a lot of hard work from a lot of people. But there's a lot of really good people involved in this Navy Rugby program. So just a big thank you to everybody. All right.
Coach, thanks again for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it. Good luck during the recruiting season.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on the pitch in the fall, okay?
Well, let's go.
All right. Take care, Coach. Okay, we are close to wrapping things up. Our question of the day and mid-watch segments are next. All right, we are heading down the home stretch here at Navy Sports Central, and that means it's time for our question of the day. First, let's go ahead and check the responses to the question from our last episode. And the subject was Navy's new offense that is being installed this year under offensive coordinator Grant Chestnut. Navy's offense averaged just over 85 passing yards per game last season. The new option-based system that Coach Grant Chestnut is installing will feature more run-pass option plays out of the shotgun and other quick-hitting passes out to the perimeter. Knowing that, how many passing yards per game do you think the Mids will average this year? And our choices were A, 90 to 99 yards, B, 100 to 109 yards, C, 110 to 119 yards, and D, 120 yards or more. So here's how things broke out. Looks like choice D, 120 yards or more, was the most popular choice. 50% of you went with that. That was followed by C, 110 to 119 yards, with 31% of you going with that choice. Next was B, 100 to 109 yards. There were 18% of you who see a little bit of an increase in Navy's efficiency on the passing side. And then finally, there's 1% of you who don't see much of a change at all, choosing 90 to 99 yards. So we will see how things play out in the fall. I can tell you just from reading some of the comments of the players after spring practices, they are looking forward to getting involved with that offense as well. So that's going to be fun to see come August. I also wanted to follow up on a question from a few episodes ago when we covered the Navy women's lacrosse team, and it had to do with Ava Jovino. She just finished a terrific freshman year, and that was capped off by her being named to the Inside Lacrosse All-American team as an honorable mention, which is quite a feat for a freshman. So I had asked for a prediction on how Ava would finish the year points-wise. The question was, if I were to set her year-end number for both goals and assists at 54.5, what would be your over-under prediction? And the choices were A, under on both, B, over on goals, under on assists, C, over on assists, under on goals, and then D, over on both. It turns out that Ava finished the year with 42 goals and 50 assists, which means that she came out under on both. Still, that was the best freshman year for an offensive player since Kelly Larkin in 2017, who, by the way, was the last Navy freshman named to the Inside Lacrosse All-America team. Okay, now it's time for this week's question, and it's pretty straightforward. With 11 Patriot League titles in 2023, Navy is in the running for another President's Cup, which is awarded to the top-performing school in the Patriot League during the regular and postseason. What other schools have won it since the Patriot League was formed in 1986? And by the way, Navy joined the league in 1991. So the choices are A, Loyola, B, Army, C, Lehigh, and D, Bucknell. Give that some thought, and you can get back to me. I'll go ahead and post it on our group Facebook page. If you haven't joined yet, please consider doing so. All you got to do is go to Facebook groups and just type in Navy Sports Nation, and it should come up. It is a private group, so you do have to answer a couple of questions to get the green light. But again, please consider doing so because it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy interacting with everybody who contributes to the page, and the more the better. Okay, it's time to close things out with our Midwatch segment, and we've been following a couple of Navy tennis players. One of them is Emily Tannenbaum. She just finished a record-breaking season by being named the 2022-23 Patriot League Player of the Year. She also earned a spot on the All-Patriot League first team for the second straight season. She matched a program record of 29 singles victories this year, tying Amanda Keller's 2015 mark. And Tannenbaum also posted 22 doubles victories, which put her 8th in the program's single-season record books. So altogether, that came out to 51 combined victories, which again is a new program record, passing Logan Antiel's 48 combined wins in 2013. Tannenbaum will be back for her junior season next year, where she looks to continue her impressive run and hopefully add a Patriot League team title to her resume. Now let's check in with Luke Garner. He finished off a great season by earning second-team All-Patriot League honors. He and Sasha Panyan were also named the Patriot League Doubles Team of the Year. They went 26-6 and finished things off by winning 14 consecutive matches. And he also had a 13-10 singles record. Those were in dual matches, by the way. Now, Garner was most impressive against Patriot League opponents. He went 7-1 in singles, and he was 7-0 in doubles with Panyan. And like Tannenbaum, he's only a sophomore, so we can look forward to a lot more great tennis from him next year. That's going to do it for this edition of Navy Sports Central. Thank you all so much for joining us. Now, if you like what you've heard, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and remember to spread the word to all the other Navy fans out there. Once again, I'd like to thank Coach James Willocks, the Assistant Director for the Navy Men's Rugby program, for joining us today. That was just awesome to get his perspective on the Mids National Championship season and what it took to get there. We have been getting a great response to our question of the day, so if you want to jump in on that, just go to the Navy Sports Nation group Facebook page. I will go ahead and pin it to the top so you won't miss it. And just a quick reminder, the views expressed on Navy Sports Central are my own and do not reflect those of the U.S. Naval Academy or Navy Athletics. By the way, the music used in Navy Sports Central comes to you courtesy of Audio Jungle. This is a great site for purchasing the rights to use music from thousands of artists around the world, and those we feature in the podcast will be credited in our show notes. Talk to you soon, everybody. Until next time, this is Carl Darden. Go Navy, beat Army.